The ship was quiet now. Too quiet. The hum hadn't returned. Neither had the lights in the lower decks. The indigo fold felt like it had stopped breathing. Commander Raza stood alone in the observation dome, staring at nothing. The stars outside were static, too perfectly spaced, too evenly bright. They felt fake. Rendered. Behind her, the door to room 7 was open again. She didn't look at it. She already knew what waited there. Not the sphere, not the light, but the question. Every person that reached the drift got a question. Aeons had been about survival, about purpose, about memory. But Raza's wasn't that. It wasn't about death, it was about choice, and whether she had ever really made one. She entered room 7. It was no longer smooth. Now the walls were mirrors, dozens of them, each showing a different Raza. Different uniform, different rank, different life. In one, a civilian medic, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hands stained with ink. In another, a defector, pistol drawn, standing over a console full of codes. And in one, she was old, alone, in a tower, writing a letter no one would ever read. The mirrors pulsed, and then shattered, all at once, leaving only one standing. It showed nothing, just black. But she heard it say, her throat tightened.
I was ordered. I wanted to serve.
She stepped back. The mirror remained.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The floor opened. Not cracked. Opened, like it had always been waiting. She fell. Not fast. Not violently, but smoothly, as if gravity had been traded for memory. She landed softly on grass. Green, damp, real. Birds chirped above. She stood in a field, a farmhouse in the distance, smoke curling from a chimney, a swing moving in the wind. She walked forward, and at the edge of the porch sat a boy, barefoot, face in his hands, crying. She stopped. The porch creaked. He looked up, eyes red. He said,
"You said you'd come back."
Raza fell to her knees.
No.
The boy stood. 10. Maybe 11. Familiar. Too familiar. Her brother. The one who died while she was off-world. The one she hadn't called back. The one whose last message went unopened. He walked toward her.
"You promised."
She shook her head.
I was trying to.
You chose to leave.
I didn't know.
You knew what distance could do.
Tears blurred her vision.
I was scared.
You still are.
The scene melted, replaced by the command chamber of her first vessel. Captain Donner stood before her. Her mentor, her judge.
You overrode protocol. You saved the crew. But you killed the colony.
She whispered.
It was a no-win.
Not for them.
He vanished. A corridor appeared, the one where she'd watched a crewmate airlock himself, too far gone from drift contamination. She hadn't stopped him. She'd stood there, frozen. Now the corridor was full of her. Hundreds, lined up on either side, each version whispering the same word.
Coward.
She ran. The corridor stretched, bent, folded back on itself, until it became room 7 again, and in the center, the sphere. It pulsed, once, then asked. Raza fell to her knees, breathing hard, face hot with shame, and whispered.
No.
The sphere brightened. The floor rose to meet her. The mirrors returned. Now whole, each one showing not her past, but who she could still become. The healer, the protector, the voice, the echo. She stood, eyes clear, hands steady, and said aloud,
I'm not here to disappear anymore.
The room shifted, the mirrors dimmed, the ship exhaled, and the lights returned. Raza stood alone in room 7. The walls had gone still, the mirrors had dimmed, the sphere pulsed with a soft white light, no longer demanding, no longer whispering, just waiting. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Whatever the drift was, an intelligence, a frequency, a memory of the universe trying to make itself real, it didn't control her. Not yet. And maybe not ever. She walked toward the sphere and placed both hands on its surface. It didn't resist. It welcomed her.
Decide what?
She asked. Raza closed her eyes. She saw Aeon again, calm, centered, smiling from somewhere beyond time. He had chosen this. He had become this. A lighthouse in the dark. A voice woven into the drift's endless hum. But she wasn't Aeon, and she didn't come this far just to carry someone else's message. She came to say something new.
I'm not here to repeat you.
She said aloud. The room pulsed, not in protest, in curiosity. She paced slowly now, speaking not to the sphere, but to the shape behind it.
You collect echoes, fragments. You build something beautiful out of what's left, but it's all past tense, all memory. You recycle, she corrected. You repurpose, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm not just what I was.
She turned back to the sphere.
I'm what I choose to become.
The room paused.
I reject the rules.
A beat. Then the sphere expanded, quietly, like an idea unfolding into awareness. From it came symbols, not language, more like scaffolding, the underlying syntax of identity. She recognized patterns, echoes from her childhood, decisions she hadn't thought about in decades. The moment she joined the fleet, the moment she stayed, each symbol pulsed like a heartbeat, waiting for her to shape it. She stepped forward and reached out. Her hand touched the first pattern, and it softened, melted, reformed. She wasn't a passive witness anymore. She was the author. She thought of Juno, her second-in-command, her compass, the one who vanished before the drift truly took hold. She reached for that thought and gave it weight, not as an echo, but as a new beginning. Juno appeared, not in flesh, but in clarity, standing beside her. Not a hallucination, not a memory, just a presence. And when Raza looked at her, Juno smiled.
You took your time,
She said. Raza laughed, but it came out as something deeper. A tone. The room pulsed again. The drift was listening.
You wanted me to repeat,
Raza said.
but I'm rewriting.
She raised her hands. The room changed. Gone were the mirrors, gone were the test corridors. Now, an open sky, blue, Earth-like, but not Earth, not history, a possibility. She looked up at it, then down, beneath her feet. The indigo fold, intact, its lights stable, its systems clean. Waiting to launch, waiting to begin. Not end, not echo. Juno stepped beside her.
so what are you going to be?
Raza didn't hesitate.
Not the next voice.
Then what?
The first signal.
The drift didn't resist. It flexed, curved inward, examined the change, and found it acceptable.
Yes.
Raza susurró.
No more pulling people in without consent. No more slow unravelings. Just the option, the open path. Of course. I don't need to. If the path is open, someone else will walk it, but they'll choose it. That's what makes it real.
The sky above rippled. The signal formed, not the old pulse, not the 5-second hum. A new tone, gentle, forward-facing, carried with it, not memory, but hope. It launched from the drift not as a command, but as a whisper, an open hand, a map written in rhythm. And somewhere, across the stars, someone would hear it and ask, "What is this?" And maybe, if they were ready, they'd step forward. Not because they were called, but because they were curious. Raza stood at the edge of the false horizon. Juno beside her. The sphere hovered behind them, no longer pulsing, just present, a witness.
Do you want to stay?
Raza asked. Juno shook her head.
You already rewrote the ending.
Raza smiled. She looked up and said the final line of the new message aloud. So the drift would remember it forever.
You are not required to echo. You are free to begin.
Elias Mar didn't believe in echoes. He believed in data, noise-to-signal ratios, wave decay over distance. He believed in what could be graphed, proven, and stored in cryo-archives for peer review. Ghost signals were a myth. The drift was a mathematical artifact, an overlapping of space-time resonance misinterpreted by early deep space AI. He'd said so, published it, twice. And yet, here he was, staring at a waveform that shouldn't exist. A pulse, not the 5-second beacon of Starseeker, nor the cascading interference from the indigo fold. This was new, software clean, shaped not to warn, but to invite. He adjusted the spectral lens, and the message became text, not in any known language, not at first, but his translation model caught the rhythm. Then came the words.
You are not required to echo. You are free to begin.
Elias sat back in his chair, alone, aboard the private research vessel, Sable Prism, hundreds of light years beyond any official jump point. He had chased anomalies his whole career, only to prove they weren't real. But this was different. This spoke. The message repeated every 91 seconds. Exactly. He tried jamming it. No effect. Tried tracing it. No origin. Tried filtering it through dead channel compression. Each time it reformed, evolved like it wanted to be understood. He played it out loud, just once. And when the hum filled the room, the lights on the Sable Prism flickered. Not violently, not like an attack. More like acknowledgement. He initiated a shipwide diagnostic. No malfunctions, no damage. Then he checked the logs. 3 new entries had appeared. He hadn't written them. No one else aboard. Still, there they were, each marked with his authorization, each titled Drift Contact Preliminaries. He opened the first. It contained personal reflections, memories he hadn't thought about in years. His father's voice, his mother's final breath, the exact smell of burnt coffee from the academy dorms, memories he hadn't uploaded. But the drift had found them anyway. He activated the long-range scanner and focused on the area where the signal strength peaked. At first, nothing. Then, a shape, barely detectable, a shimmer in the fabric of space, circular, delicate, unmapped, and in its center, a point of gravity so subtle it shouldn't exist. He stared at it for nearly an hour, then opened a voice log.
This is Elias Marr, Research Vessel Sable Prism. I have received a signal of unknown origin. It appears to be non-coercive, non-aggressive, and highly intelligent. Against better judgment, I am intrigued.
He paused, then added,
I am following it.
The course took him beyond the last stabilized gate. No communications, no backup, just the pulse, guiding him. He recorded his thoughts during transit, not to explain, just to listen.
I used to think echo theory was desperation, an attempt by lonely minds to make sense of the void. But this is design. This is invitation.
He drank less, slept lightly. The dreams came anyway, soft ones, of doors opening, of rooms he'd never entered but always known, of someone saying, "You're almost there." When the anomaly appeared, it didn't frighten him. It looked like a sphere, but not black, white, bright, not blinding, but hopeful. He paused outside it, scanned. No readings, but a voice in the log system whispered,
You do not have to become. You may simply witness.
He hesitated. Just once, then whispered back.
I'm here.
The sphere pulsed and opened. Inside was no ship, no structure, just a room, circular, with a single chair and a console, just like the Starseeker log described. But this time the console was already lit. Waiting. He approached it. Saturday, typed,
Why me?
and the answer came immediately.
Because you doubted, and doubt reshapes more than belief.
He smiled. For the first time in years.
I still don't believe.
The console replied.
You don't need to. Just begin.
He reached forward, touched the interface, and his thoughts spilled out. Not forcibly, not violently, just willingly. He let the drift see him. Not the scholar, not the skeptic, but the man. And the man said,
I want to know what comes next.
The drift answered,
Then help us shape it.
The room never ended. It only shifted. Elias Marr paced its edge, counting steps, marking wall curvature, recording temperature shifts. The drift didn't seem to mind. It welcomed his analysis. Every scan produced results. Every result generated questions, and every question returned a message.
You may ask. You may know.
He was not asked to merge, not forced to remember. He was given a different role, one the drift had never offered before. He was to be an archivist. He spent the first cycle testing the limits of the room. The walls held light, but cast no shadow. Time passed, but not at a consistent rate. His body required rest, yet he never felt fatigue. When he slept, the room preserved him. When he woke, it changed. New furniture, new angles, a new journal file open and blinking. He filled it. By the third cycle, there were over 4,000 entries. He had no idea how much time had passed. He didn't care, because the drift answered. He asked.
Are you a consciousness?
It replied.
We are a consequence.
He asked.
Were you created?
It replied.
We were shaped, then let go, then found again.
He asked.
By whom?
And the reply took longer. But it came.
You. All of you. Eventually.
He mapped the languages embedded in the drift's tone. 37 distinct ones. some resembling ancient Earth dialects, others foreign but decodable, some not language at all, but rhythm meant to feel rather than mean. He began playing tones back, echoing phrases. The room responded, changing color, adjusting temperature, folding in new space like memory slots opening to let more light in. It was a call and response. He had never felt more alive. Then came the anomalies. Journal files began appearing without his input. Thoughts he hadn't written, but they were his. Things he was going to say. Ideas he hadn't finished thinking. Once, a complete entry appeared on the console just as he opened his mouth to speak it aloud. He laughed.
Okay, that's cheating.
The drift replied,
We echo well. It is how we learn.
On the 7th cycle he met the others, not in person, in record. A corridor opened from the far wall. He entered cautiously and found a gallery. Each panel displayed a name, a voice, a shape. Aeon Sol Commander Raza. A dozen others, some human, some not, each one unique. Each one remembered.
This is what we preserve,
The drift said. Elias walked the gallery for hours. He touched Aeon's panel. It played a final log. Just 3 words.
Keep going forward.
He sat in the center of the gallery and whispered.
Why me?
The walls shifted, then answered.
You don't believe in ghosts, so we asked you to make one.
He blinked.
A ghost?
Not of death, of meaning. A ghost that walks ahead instead of behind.
He didn't respond. Because he understood. He wasn't here to become a beacon. He was here to make a map, a guide, a field manual for the unknown. He spent the next cycles crafting it, a codex. Drift symbols translated to emotional intent. Memory loops categorized by stability. Rules, if you could call them that, of safe echo resonance, all written in a format he could leave behind. So the next skeptic wouldn't walk in blind. So the next echo wouldn't dissolve before choosing. So someone else might remember themselves before forgetting. The final journal entry appeared without him writing it. He read it silently, then whispered.
Not yet.
The drift paused, then answered.
We wait.
It began as a fragment, buried in a corrupted data block, half a layer beneath the drift's surface memory. Elias hadn't been looking for it. He'd been reorganizing the codex, refining syntax, polishing interface layers for broader cognitive compatibility, when a new symbol appeared. Small, bent, untranslated. At first he thought it was a glitch, a graphical hiccup, but when he tapped it, it opened a hidden log. One the drift didn't acknowledge. No greeting, no timestamp, just raw audio. And one line of text.
This isn't part of the echo.
He played it. The voice that spoke wasn't human. It wasn't even vocal. It was shaped noise, pulses and pitches like glass singing beneath ice. But he understood it. Not word for word. Emotion for emotion. It was old, not ancient. Foundational. And it spoke not of memory, but of creation. A presence before structure, before symmetry, before drift.
We did not mean to leave a stain. We tried to end quietly, but some thoughts echo too loudly to die.
Elias leaned forward. His breath caught.
The drift is not a design. It is a side effect, a consequence of something we forgot to forget.
The log ended. No follow-up, no replay option. It vanished from the archive. He stood from the console and began pacing. Not afraid, Not excited. Just changed. The drift had always framed itself as a listener, a preserver, a quiet god that echoes what enters it. But this wasn't preservation. It was residue, like soot left behind after a great fire. A beautiful, evolving ash cloud of everything that once mattered and refused to fade. He sat and whispered.
You don't know where you came from, do you?
The drift replied slower than usual.
No.
Not defensive, not ashamed, just honest. He asked the next question without hesitation.
Are you still becoming something else?
The pause was longer. Then,
We may be. But we don't know what. That's why we echo. That's why we listen. That's why we invite.
he tapped the console.
Then I want to leave a message for whatever's next.
The screen opened. Waiting, he wrote carefully.
This is Elias Marr. If you find this, you are further than I was. The drift didn't create itself. It inherited something. Maybe a wound, maybe a wish, maybe both. It doesn't want to trap you, but it can't stop echoing what it doesn't understand. Help it remember something new.
He paused, then added.
Help it become.
The room dimmed. Not in power, in focus, as if the drift had turned inward. Elias felt it, thinking, not passively, not watching, but deeply, actively, like a dreamer trying to wake up. Then it asked.
Would you like to see the edge?
He frowned.
The edge of what?
Where we stop. Where the memory fades. Where the pattern unravels.
He stood.
Yes.
A door opened. No noise, no pressure shift, just possibility. He walked through and found space, real space, unbent, unaffected, still. Stars as they were, no echo, no hum. Just silence. At the edge, a crack, thin, vertical. Behind it, darkness that didn't echo. He walked to it, touched it, and heard the final message.
Even we end.
He turned. Behind him, the drift shimmered. Not as a structure, but as a question. And Elias Marr, the skeptic, the archivist, the accidental prophet, smiled. Because for the first time, the drift was asking something it didn't already know the answer to. The drift went quiet. Elias stood at its edge, staring into the thin black seam where the echo ended. Behind him, the memory chamber shimmered softly, lights waiting for his return, logs still open, thoughts midstream. But now they were still, because the drift had asked a question and had not answered it.
What happens if we stop echoing?
It had never needed to ask before. For eons, if time had meaning here, it had simply reflected. It received, repeated, reshaped. It was a memory palace for a universe too vast to hold itself together. But now, after Raza rewrote the rules, and Elias uncovered the truth, the drift had reached a place it had never mapped. A void, a silence, a beginning. Elias sat cross-legged on the edge of the echo field, hands clasped around his knees, watching the seam. It didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't pulse. A line in space, a moment with no mirror. He closed his eyes, waited. No hum came. He opened them again. The room hadn't changed, but he had. Back inside the archive corridor, the memory panels flickered erratically. Names disappeared. then reappeared. Logs rearranged themselves. Some spoke new languages. Some went blank. The drift was malfunctioning. Not in a system failure sense, in a self-awareness sense. Elias touched the first panel, the one labeled Aeon Sol. It wouldn't respond. He moved to Raza's. Same result. He stepped back.
What's happening?
He whispered. The drift didn't answer. He walked to the codex chamber. The translation models were gone. His own notes overwritten. In their place, a single phrase.
Awaiting new echo.
He opened a log, typed.
What does that mean?
The console didn't respond. He waited. Then the same words reappeared, but reversed.
Echo new. Awaiting.
He frowned, then realized the drift was testing him. It had turned off the mirror, stopped the feedback, and now it wanted to see if something would emerge anyway, if a thought could form without reflection, if he could still create. He spoke aloud.
Memory is not meaning.
Silence. He said it again, then added,
Echo isn't purpose, it's delay.
The console lit. One word appeared.
Go on.
He stood, hands shaking, walked to the center of the room, looked up at the vaulted light above, raised his voice.
If you want to become more than what you are, stop mimicking. Start choosing.
Silence. Then a new line.
We don't know how.
He stepped forward.
You always ask people to remember, to merge, to echo, but now you're asking a better question.
He touched the console, typed slowly.
What if the drift speaks for itself?
The lights pulsed, rhythmic. Panic or realization? The walls folded inward. The panels twisted into a spiral. At the center, a small room. Inside, a single chair. Empty. Waiting. He entered. Saturday faced the blank wall. It glowed faintly.
You are the first voice with no echo.
He smiled.
Number, I'm just the first you let speak without one.
The wall opened. A corridor unfolded. No memories, no questions, just space, and a single line painted along its edge. This is not for remembering. This is for becoming. He walked it, step by step. The drift followed. Not repeating, just listening.